Welcome to the swamp, which is better than this frozen piece of shit game. Yeah, off the bat I'm fucking angry at this game for wasting my time. I saw the screenshots of this game in the Steam store and thought, oh, a cold version of Green Hell. This ought to be fun. Try far from it. Let's get into it. My name is Excalligator. I rate games based on many categories that would fit into most survival games, based on a 1 to 5 system. If a category does not apply, it will not affect the game's overall score. Now let us get started. I played this game for 12 hours, but it should have been 5. I'll explain why in a little bit. Northern Lights is a game where you are stranded on an island off the coast of the northern Russian area, Siberia really, and have to find your way off this island, all while fighting the elements and ferocious beasts. You need to also find out what happened to everyone and where they all went. You have to manage your health in similar ways to other, quote, realistic games, and is touted to be a hardcore experience. This game should run on a middle-of-the-road computer. I'll get more into it during the bugs section, but it was half and half for me. It ran well sometimes, and it didn't for others. Though real quick, I wish to mention before we go any further in the review that the footage you see has very low frame rates. That is an issue on OBS's end. The game itself during its good moments ran at 60 FPS most of the time, while I saw my OBS recording drop to 30 or lower often. I tried to fix it, but nothing seemed to work, so I apologize for the terrible video quality this time around. There is no character creation, and you don't even get to know your character's name. I'm not going to rate this section because it does not apply. You hit new game and are plummeted right into the world. No cutscene, but you were supposedly in a helicopter crash and somehow survived. The game leads you along until you reach your first outpost where you need to look for clues on what to do next. From there, it will now hint at what to do, but give you a general area to search until you get to the snowmobile, which will become 2 different rants in 2 different sections of this review, so prepare yourself. But other than that, you are given pop-up menus as needed to learn how to play the game. I do wish it was a bit more detailed, as I had issues at the start learning how to craft, for example, but eventually I figured it out and started to learn how to survive in this game. I'm gonna rate the opening a 3 out of 5, a generic start, okay tutorials, and a decent pace with a bit of a push into the right direction of where you needed to go. Okay, so the exploration of this game is something. First of all, while the first area labeled the Mysterious Woods are compact enough that walking is an option, it still takes quite a long time to travel there from the research camp, but the woods themselves are not that bad. After you finish the first area, now you go out to the rest of the map. The points of interest are far and few between, with nothing between them. It is just snow and trees everywhere. I'm sorry, but even games that tout as survival in a barren wasteland will still make it interesting with the various environments that help and want you to explore, or at least help you keep not as bored while traveling. Here, because it's so repetitive in the scenery, the half hour it takes to travel from one spot to another will be fucking boring as shit. The animals in the map are far and few between. Occasionally you can find a spot where it has a few animals in it, but other times you can go on for a while without seeing any. The various towns in the world are a great source of materials. I found enough rope that I never needed to craft it. Cloth and wood is in abundance. So was food. Towns had tons of stuff and had plenty of items to help with progression. Right after that, you unlock the snowmobile, which I first encountered another topic of ranting that I'll get to in the story section. But this rant will focus on the world itself, as not only it is so large to the point that the snowmobile is mandatory, but if you don't want to take a real life hour to get from one town to another, but between all of the towns, the map is empty. No landmarkers, barely any exploration, wants or needs. While I appreciate that the animals are dynamically spawned, which is something I love in games, they are not only far and few between, but they are stiff as fuck, and they are not even a threat, which is a PvE discussion. Then the snowmobile itself is coded so badly as you use it, every goddamn yard you drive, the machine wants to spin anywhere from 25 to 180 degrees, and sometimes a full 360 which makes driving this machine a nightmare. Anytime you wanted to go somewhere, it made it take twice as long. The machine would just get stuck on the stupidest thing, causing you to push it off of the rock that it got stuck on, which leads to other problems. Another rant for later, which led me to writing this review without finishing the game because I'm so fucking over this goddamn snowmobile and its terrible mechanics. This whole section is gonna get a 1 out of 5. Not even the towns are boosting this because even those were terrible. Every house had the exact same type of items in it, from tons of food, loads of supplies, that never made me feel that I went without. Speaking of survival, at the start of the game, it was mildly difficult, keeping fed and warm and so on, but let me tell you, once you actually start exploring towns, you find so much food, so many items, that you never feel that you are trying to survive. After the first few hours of the game, I was always full on water and food. I always had bandages, I found tons of medicine, I couldn't even hold them all in my bags, I had to keep skipping over them, and my bag was full of ammo before I even got the gun. I never got an infection. The only things I suffered from were a mild flu and a fever, which went away quickly. I suffered from a concussion at one point because a moose whacked me, which was the worst thing ever because it makes you hallucinate, so your character is constantly talking to himself in his head. I had to shut off the dialogue audio because it was so annoying for me. Speaking of, there is a sanity system in the game. Not only did I not see it anywhere that I could check on the stats of the mental health, but I don't think I ever got it low. I always see -2 for encumbrance, negative for bad weather, but I don't ever think I hit it low, and because you get so much of it back from food and campfires, it became a non-issue. I never had to worry about my sanity. I think there are other status effects as well. I know abrasion is one, but I had so many bandages I never really had to deal with it. And anything else I didn't mention here was because I never had them at all, so I don't even know they exist. So yeah, 2 out of 5 for survival, mildly difficult at the start, but it becomes a non-issue by the mid-game. There is no building in this game. There are some storage racks and such you can build. I never used any of them, as they are useless. You are moving around so much that a home base was worthless, not to mention the chests didn't even hold anything at all. You can only hold 3 different items, up to 6 in a stack each. If I was encumbered, I just dropped items and never missed them. I did build 1 storage box, but all I put in it was arrows in case I needed my bow again because I got my gun. The crafting is barely used. I used it at the start of the game for campfires and occasional beds, but you can find scrap metal and rope so easy. I just made metal items and never had to worry about durability. I only had to recraft my knife once, and my axe I found hatchet in the world, which lasted me the whole playthrough. I never built traps because hunting is a joke in this game. You can 3-shot a moose with your scrap spear, or you can just run over a bear with your snowmobile and 1-shot them. Even then, the meat you get is not worth it when you can just gather tons of canned food from homes, and the meat is so heavy, for one, you can't even fit it all in your bags if you've been scavenging. And even if your bag was empty, it would just encumber you. You can leave behind almost everything because you just keep finding it. This whole section is going to get a 2 out of 5. Basic crafting, but mostly useless after the start of the game, and there's no reason to build anything. Not even campfires, because every single home has a fireplace or something similar that you just gotta light it and use. You don't really have to build anything. Even beds are in abundance. PvE does not exist in this game. You make a weapon to fight or hunt animals, but let me tell you, I've only ever fought 2 animals this entire playthrough, and both of them were moose, which are aggressive as fuck. I'll say it again, I appreciate the dynamic spawning, which means it's never the same animal in the same spot every single time. I like it that way, but the combat itself is literally just stab or shoot the animal faster than they can hit you and hope they don't give you a concussion or a laceration. As I mentioned before, I have never had to fight a bear in this game. The few that I saw, I just ran over with the snowmobile and instantly killed them. And I only ever saw 1 wolf my whole playthrough, which I ran that bitch over. So, really, do you want me to say more on this subject? Because I'm not. 1 out of 5. Jesus fucking Christ, this section is gonna be one of the banes of my existence of this game. Next to the terrible snowmobile mechanics, who the hell on this team thought it was really clever to make this game where you have to play the story so linear that if you ever find something before you are supposed to, you can't do anything with it? A simple example was the weather station, which is early on. You start exploring around the area and you can find a body, but you cannot even interact with it. You then go to the door and find you need a key. Well, guess what? The key is on the body. You cannot grab the key before you interact with the door, so that you know that you need the key. Now here is the biggest piece of shit. After you get the snowmobile, instead of pointing you in the right direction, it just says, go explore the island to find a way out. That's fine. So I go do that. And I find jack shit the entire map. I get so frustrated, I look up what you are supposed to do because I've circled the entirety of the map, and guess what? The second place I visited is a dock with a boat. I can visibly see the blue highlighted parts of the engine to repair it. I try going inside the house. It's locked. It says the person is nearby with the key. I go find the body and get the house key to get access to the house. Nothing is in there, so I explore everywhere else, from the lighthouse to the military camp to the airfield. Then I look up what you're supposed to do, and it says you are supposed to find a note in the maintenance garage to continue the story. Guess fucking what? That was the first area I explored before the docks, after I got the snowmobile, that is. And I didn't see a note at all. So I go all the way fucking back and search for 20 minutes until I finally find this shit laying flat on the shelf, barely visible in the back. Now I can continue the main story, which involves me going back to the lighthouse, which I already was there, to then go back to the docks, to go back to the dead guy with the house key because now he has the boat key, which I couldn't get before because I didn't get to that point in the story yet. To then find out I have to revisit every single spot on the map I already visited to find all of the parts of the boat to leave the map. Well, guess fucking what? I traveled for 20 minutes to the first area for one of the parts, and then the snowmobile got stuck in the terrain and fell through the fucking world, causing me to reload and lose those 20 minutes of travel. And I said, fuck this game, and I uninstalled. Okay, the TLDR is that the linearity of progression to beat this game is so fucking terrible in its design that it's causing you to backtrack hours. Oh, by the way, there is a plot B, which is to find out why the island is so cold and why everyone left, but that goes nowhere. You find the issue, but not the cause. I suspect it's because the story itself is not finished yet, as this is an early access game, but either way, I'm so pissed off, I'm giving this a 1 out of 5. By the way, I'm gonna be skipping the next 3 sections, being story written, endgame, and modding, because they do not apply. Okay, as I'm writing this review, it is June of 2023. I scrolled back to find when the last time this game was updated, not including the most recent one, which was a few days ago, because all that is adding Korean localization. The last update was in March, February, and January, which were all hotfixes. I don't know how often this game gets content updates, and these hotfixes for fixing bugs and such seem irregular. From the start of this year, they happened once a month, and then just stopped. So I'm not sure if or when this game is ever going to be finished from early access, due to the irregularity of the update. I'm giving this section a 2.5 out of 5. It's irregular, as well as slow for updates to the game, with no foreseeable future release at this time. If it eventually releases, good on it, but who knows when that will be. Just like with my Ephesus review, I'm going to be naming the bugs I found listed in order instead of reading out 20 paragraphs. So here we go. While the game ran at 60 frames the majority of the time, it would spike to 30 or less once in a while. Sometimes the game would freeze for several seconds, which was more rare, but it did happen. Trees would be invisible and all you would see are floating birds' nests. Sometimes other items like tables would vanish and you would see floating objects. The animals are static and sometimes get locked into an animation while they're supposed to be idle. The snowmobile loves to whiplash you constantly and is practically unusable. Every time you start up the game, you would be given the body temperature tutorial pop-up even though you've already seen it. And I fell through the world while on the snowmobile while trying to right it from getting stuck, and then it spazzed out and clipped through the mesh. I think that's what I can remember off the top of my head. This section is going to get a 1 out of 5 because of how buggy and terrible it is. The majority of my frustration came from the snowmobile. While not all of the bugs were bad, as I could play the game most of the time, but when traveling and exploring, it is dependent on the vehicle due to the outrageous size of this map. You are not only bored because of the map design in general, but also frustrated to hell with fighting the snowmobile constantly. My overall score for this trash game is going to be a 1.8 out of 5. This game, I say stay the hell away from and save your money. Now, who knows? It might turn around and actually be good by the launch. But as of right now in early access, keep a healthy distance and spare your sanity from the terrible quest linearity, terribly coded snowmobile, and the boring animals who did fuck all to hinder my gameplay. I'm sorry I was cussing a lot more in this review than I usually do, but I just really needed to let out my frustration and why I uninstalled the game before I even finished. It's just not worth it. But anyway, that is the end of my review. Craftopia is releasing an open world update. I think I'm going to be trying that out next and reviewing it. I'll see you later. And that is the end of this video. If you liked my review, please subscribe to this channel as I will be making more in-depth reviews of open-world sandbox survival RPG games, including those that no one ever talks about from the deepest, darkest depths of Steam. Some games that even look like the muck at the bottom of my pond. If you have any suggestions for what game to do next, please comment below and like this video. Florida Gator Man out.